So welcome everyone. This is the Crisis Care Emergency Boarding and Foster Safety Nets conference presentation. My name is Dillon Dodson and I am your moderator today. I am an advisory council member and My Dog is My Home, as well as the co-chair of the Canadian Working Group. I am based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and such a pleasure to be with you all today. I am beyond thrilled and honored to be able to introduce you to our esteemed panelists today. I am a social worker who works at Toronto Humane Society am also the vice president of the International Association of Veterinary Social Work. And so it is fabulous and so exciting to be joined with some of our social work panelists. I also have had the tremendous pleasure of creating our safe pet keeping program here at Toronto Humane Society. And I think one of the things that was so critical in our journey of developing our crisis boarding program was to hear from other programs, some of the successes they had had, as well as some of the challenges they had had. More than that, it was also super fascinating to hear about the different communities and what those community needs demanded and required. And so that is what I am so thrilled that you'll get to hear about in this presentation today, is how each of our panelists have been able to organize, design, and implement their programs based on their community needs. Today we are joined by Kyra Munz from Foothills Animal Shelter, as well as Kristina Pulsipher from Rough Haven, as well as Thaler from Atlanta Humane. And I cannot wait to share a little bit about these wonderful individuals. So first we'll start with Kyra. Kyra is Colorado's first full-time animal shelter-based social worker. As the Better Together program manager at Foothills Animal Shelter, her goal is to keep people and pets together during crisis situations. During her time developing the Better Together program, during her time developing the Better Together program, the program has been chosen for the Jefferson County Public Health Champion Award and Domestic Abuse Survivor Hero Award to acknowledge services provided to the community. Wow, that's incredible. Munz gained her Bachelor's of Social Work from Auburn University and her Master's of Social Work from the University of Denver with a certificate in Human-Animal Environmental Interactions. While there, Munz also worked with the Institute for Human-Animal Connection, conducting research on the protective factors of keeping pets and people together during crisis and animal-assisted therapy. Thanks, Kyra, for being with us.
Thank you.
As I said, we are also joined by Kristina Pulsipher. Kristina Pulsipher is also a licensed social worker. Oh, my screen just went completely blank.
We can still hear and see you.
You can? Oh, thank
Yes.
goodness. Okay, my apologies. And my screen just came back. Kristina is also a licensed social worker with over 25 years of experience serving the Salt Lake Valley. Her career has spanned work with diverse populations, most recently supporting adults involved in the criminal justice system. She is also a trauma-informed practices facilitator and has provided training to multiple animal welfare organizations. In 2020, Kristina co-founded Rough Haven Crisis Sheltering to provide temporary care for pets whose guardians are experiencing crisis situations such as domestic violence, hospitalization, as well as mental health treatment. She has led Rough Haven in bridging the gap between human and animal services, advocating for solutions that support entire families, pets included. Her legislative work includes helping pass HB 175 in 2022, which allows pets to be included in protective orders, and SB 116 in 2024, which offers protections for pet owners facing eviction. She also successfully added a pet-related question to the Utah's homelessness management information systems in 2025, becoming one of the first states in the country to do so. While her dual background in human and animal services, Kristina ensures Rough Haven meets the needs of both ends of the leash. She has presented at national conferences, including Best Friends National Conference and events focused on domestic violence, mental health, and substance use. And Kristina holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from Brigham Young University. We are also thrilled to be joined by Thaler. Cole is the manager of the Atlanta Humane Society's Pets in Crisis Support Program, where he assists pet owners who are losing their housing or facing other hardships. Prior to this, Cole spent a decade serving tenants in poverty at the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation, most recently as the managing attorney for the Saturday Lawyer Program. He has also practiced law at Georgia Legal Services Program and Lamba Legal. Cole attended Northeastern University School of Law and Williams College. He lives with his husband and many rescue pets in Atlanta. If only we had time to learn about all of that. Thank you again to the panelists for joining us today and for all of our attendees. Over 70% of US households have pets, and many families are just one crisis away from losing them. Unforeseen emergencies and financial hardship often lead to relinquishment. Let's be clear, this is not out of choice, but necessity. For pet parents without social support or access to safe pet care, crises such as housing instability, hospitalization, treatment for health-related concerns, or fleeing domestic violence may leave surrender as the only viable option. This session today brings together our three representatives from various animal welfare organizations with crisis support programs, and they're going to discuss their organization's operations and the impact on the community they serve. Through this moderated panel discussion, there will be a tremendous amount of time for audience questions, so we certainly invite you to pop those into the Q&A section because we really want the opportunity to give you the opportunity to ask the questions that are really burning for you. So we can all continue to work together to preserve families by providing resources and support to the communities that we are in. So without further ado, I did want to share a poll. I hope that this has come through, but we had invited attendees to complete a poll so that we could get a sense of where you are coming from. And our question for the group was, where are you in your crisis foster program journey? And you can see that there's about 1/3 of our attendees today that are in varying stages of their journey. So that number is changing actively as our numbers go up. So about 40 of us in the room today are actually actively involved in planning and or operating a program. Wonderful. Approximately 1/3, so 32%, are familiar with safe pet keeping programs, but are not currently operating a program. And we have about 26% of people that are somewhat unsure or unfamiliar with our program. So with these type of programs, pardon me. Thank you so much for completing that. That gives us a good sense of where you're at in your journey to either incorporating or becoming familiar with our safe pet keeping programs. Okay, without further ado, I am going to invite our friends from Rough Haven to speak about their program. If you all will give me one brief indulgence so I can share my screen.
Amazing. Let's see.
Okay, Kristina, can you see that?
Almost. We are almost there. Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Wonderful.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our call. We love talking about crisis sheltering and supporting our community by, ensuring that their family members are taken care of. So, my name is Kristina Pulsipher. I'm one of the co-founders and co-executive directors of Rough Haven. We do have a co-executive director model, and we did start in 2020 in June. Like so many of us, I think, we had actually started talking about forming this kind of programming in January. So technically before the pandemic, but things changed very rapidly. And honestly, we just got our footing and, kind of baptism by fire for that. As Dillon mentioned, I am a licensed social worker. I've worked in Salt Lake County and in the Valley here for about 25 years. I worked for DCFS, worked with different youth groups, adults in the criminal justice system, and so forth, and formed this program while I was working full-time, and we did it all volunteer for a while. So our crisis sheltering program, we started off as just doing that. And, when we started, we were like, oh, great, we're going to take in 10 animals at a time. And here we are 6 years later and have taken in 1,400. So it has just been a tremendous need here. We are, acute short-term crisis. And so we provide 60 to 90 days of care care for the pets of people experiencing a crisis or hardship. Our largest priority is domestic violence, but we also assist with eviction, homelessness, hospitalization, substance use treatment, some incarceration, depending on the time frame, and so forth. We do have a boarding facility, so we actually moved in August, and it used to be we were the nonprofit arm of the boarding facility. That changed, and now everything is under the nonprofit. And we do still have paid boarding, grooming, and so forth. That's kind of like an enterprise, and that helps with funding for our services. So we are not, traditional animal shelter, but we're not fully foster-based either. And so we are able to bring animals in pretty quickly because they can stay in the facility. And then we also have a really great foster home program. We're very low barrier. We don't have any sort of income requirements. We don't require referrals. I think because of social work having that in the field. And then we're trauma informed. We've got a lovely community care manager who's on the call right now, and a board member. That's Lexi, actually, there in the picture on the right. She was one of our first clients with her cats in 2020, and we asked her to join our board the year after, and she is lovely and amazing, and probably our most important board member, as we like to tell her. It's not all about money. It's not about raising funds. It's really about her connections to our clients. So we love her. All of our services are free. We do vaccines, spay, neuter, preventative medical care as needed. And then we're funded through grants, private donations, and actually we've gotten quite a bit of government funding money. So we have been fortunate. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you so much, Kristina. That was a fabulous overview. And I can't wait to get to our question and answer period. I'm sure there's going to be lots of really interesting questions, perhaps about length of stay, perhaps about the large sizable number of animals that you've been able to and families you've been able to support. And also that really important question around funding. I'm certain that we'll have questions about that. Thank you. Okay, moving along. Kyra, may I invite you to share about your fabulous program?
Absolutely. I'm going to go through this slide pretty quickly since you did a wonderful job already introducing me. But hi, I am Kyra. I am the social worker and Better Together program manager at Foothills Animal Shelter. So on this slide, I just want to point out that I am licensed in the state of Colorado. And then those are my two cats on the screen, Berlioz and Princess Pork. Princess Pork just had her 8th birthday last week. So happy birthday to her. You can jump to the next slide. So this is Foothills Animal Shelter. We are located in Jefferson County, Colorado. We are the only municipal animal shelter, full service municipal animal shelter in Jefferson County. So we do all of your kind of more typical like shelter services. We have adoptions, lost and found services, TNR for feral cats. And then in addition, in 2022, we began our Better Together program to provide more direct supportive services to our community. We are an open admissions shelter, which just means that we don't turn anybody away for time or space, and we don't operate with kind of appointment based. It's really just if anybody in the community is needing our support, they can come on in, and we're contracted to Jefferson County to provide that support to all of our county. We're also a socially conscious shelter, which is kind of becoming a national standard. It's just the understanding that animal shelters must also work to provide services to the humans that own the pets in order to create better outcomes for the pets. And then lastly, we are also a fear-free facility. So all of our staff members and volunteers are trained to use different tools and techniques to reduce fear, frustration, stress, and anxieties for all of the animals at our shelter. And I kind of like to use that fear-free training and kind of take it up a step and say, okay, all of you staff and volunteers understand how to do this and reduce stress and anxiety and fear for all of our animals. So you already have those basic skills there. How can you use those for our people as well? And so I am able to do staff training and volunteer training to encourage more kind of trauma-informed interactions. And on average, we see between 7,000 to 9,000 animals every year, between transfers coming in from out of state, as well as surrenders, lost and found animals, things like that. Then I have one more slide here. Perfect. So looking at our Better Together program, we have three main areas of operation, and we're also a pretty small team. So just this year, we were able to hire a second full-time person. I think Cameron's on the call, so hi, Cameron, if you're listening. But previous to Cameron, it was really just myself running the program, in addition to my supervisor kind of helping to oversee any things that came up. But now we have a staff of two, as well as two additional folks that can help with relief whenever we need from time to time. So it's been really exciting to kind of see how this program has grown throughout the years. So with our three main areas of operation, our protective custody program is the most robust, I would say. So we provide temporary care for families in Jefferson County experiencing a crisis, including housing instability. It could be eviction or chronically unhoused, as well as hospitalization for mental health or physical health circumstances. Incarceration for folks that are incarcerated due to a non-animal related situation. Folks getting out of domestic violence, as well as if owners pass away, those animals will enter into our program. We will reach out to the coroner's office to obtain next of kin information to try and get that animal back to a familiar environment, whether that be a friend or a family member. While the pets are on site with us, we do provide vaccines, microchips, and spay neuter when and if available. We always do it for vaccines and microchips, and we don't require spay neuter for this program as part of our dedication to being a low barrier program. We understand that spay neuter can have risks due to various behavioral or medical circumstances, as well as just kind of cultural beliefs with pet keeping. And so we don't want to make that a requirement for the program. We do also provide resource referrals and navigation. So part of our being a socially conscious shelter is we have a pretty robust partnership with our community and human service agencies, as well as many other animal welfare organizations, who many are also on this call. So hi, everybody. And so we kind of use that network as a way to be able to refer our patients or our clients with the community and whoever they're needing based on their circumstances. And then we do also provide transportation services. We never want transportation to be the barrier when it comes to getting animals to our facility or picking them back up. So we partner with animal control, as well as a couple of other agency partners. And then we have our own funding to be able to get pet-friendly Ubers for folks to drop off as well as pick up. And then lastly, I just want to point out a pretty interesting statistic last year. So last year, I'm so sorry, I skipped a couple other parts of our program. We also have a Better Together community shelf, where it's your traditional model with donations. Folks will donate food, supplies, and then we will give them back out to the community. No proof of income or circumstance necessary. And then lastly, we have weekly low-cost vaccination clinics. And last year we saw just over 4,500 animals at those clinics. And then lastly, I wanted to look at our total intakes as a shelter last year, not including animals coming on site for protective custody, was about 7,500. And those that we supported with the Better Together program, including protective custody, our Better Together community shelf, our vaccination clinics, we saw just over 8,000. So while we are a small portion of the services that Foothills provides, we do service about the same number of animals and people every year.
Wow, what a comprehensive program. Kyra, thank you for giving us some information, some statistical information too. That's really important and helpful for us to know when we're sort of looking at our communities and looking at if we're trying to plan our program, and looking at what need is. It sounds like your program is providing tremendous and critical amounts of support to your specific community. Thank you so much. I know that there's going to be quite a few questions. I have some of my own. Thanks, Kyra. My friend, Mr. Cole, may we invite you to share about your program? Cannot wait to hear about what's happening at Atlanta Humane.
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really nice to be here with you and at this amazing conference. So I work for the Atlanta Humane Society, where I manage our Pets in Crisis support program. We call it PICS for short. So our clients, like the previous speakers, are very similar. They are pet owners who are currently experiencing one of three types of crisis, either housing instability, broadly defined, eviction, literal homelessness, couch surfing, what have you. People who are leaving domestic violence situations, or people who are experiencing, it's really an acute health need, I think is probably a better term, because that includes anybody who needs to go inpatient for surgery, rehab, detox, inpatient mental health care, anything related to their health. And for any of those reasons, they're not able to care for their pet. And so the PICS program steps in to offer temporary foster care for up to 90 days to give that pet owner time to stabilize. And then we aim to reunite them with their pet. Like the other programs, we also offer free vaccinations, spay and neutering, preventative care, and free food and supplies. And I think I may say this on the next slide, but I'll just go ahead and say it here, which is that when the pet owner does secure new housing at the end of the foster period, if their landlord charges a pet deposit, we pay that for them as well. So that's one less thing for them to worry about. I do want to say, having attended as much of this conference as I've been able to for the last 2.5 days, to my mind, co-sheltering is the gold standard. In an ideal world, no one would ever have to be separated for even a day from their pet, if they didn't want to be. But I see our type of program, this crisis foster program, as sort of we're the battlefield nurses. While we are working to make all homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters pet inclusive, we need something to offer to stop the bleeding, to prevent people from having to separate from their pets at all. So in those types of situations, our programs are available and growing in number across the country and the world. But I am simultaneously working to try to get homeless shelters in the Atlanta area to become pet welcoming, pet inclusive. Currently, there's none in the state that allow pets in Georgia. So some domestic violence shelters do, no homeless shelters do. So that work is happening simultaneously with the crisis fostering work. Can go to the next slide. And just a few facts about the program, and happy to answer more questions either during this session or outside of the session. So before I came to work at the Atlanta Humane Society, I was the co-founder and was helping run a standalone crisis foster nonprofit called Pause Between Homes. That launched in January of 2020. And the group of us running that organization, we really did not know what we were doing. So I can speak to what it's like to run a crisis foster program, really just kind of making it up as we went along and making lots of mistakes and learning from mistakes and then doing better. While Pause Between Homes was up and running, the Atlanta Humane Society got a large grant it was actually late 2023, to create the Pets in Crisis support program. So that program was formally launched in 2024. I was then hired to manage the program. And then formally in 2025, the Atlanta Humane Society merged with or acquired Pause Between Homes. That was what we wanted to have happen, because it's, for lots of reasons, the greater resources that the Humane Society had to offer. So Pause Between Homes work now lives at the Atlanta Humane Society under the PICS name. We, like the other presenters, we combine pet-centered resources with human-centered resources, and I'm pretty proud of our partnership with Atlanta Legal Aid. I am an attorney, and my background is as a poverty lawyer working on behalf of tenants, fighting with their landlords who were breaking the law. The Humane Society has a memorandum of understanding with Atlanta Legal Aid, We ask everyone who applies for help to the Pets in Crisis support program if their landlord has filed an eviction in court. And if they have, and they live in legal aid's 5-county service area, we ask if they would like to be referred to an attorney for at least advice, if not extended representation in their eviction case. So again, happy to talk more about that but that's, I think, one nice example of how we combine human service and animal service. The Pets in Crisis program has an 86% reunification rate at the end of our foster period. So, could be better, but I think that's decent. The pets that don't get reunited with their families do become surrendered to the Humane Society and made available to the public for adoption. And like Kyra, my program has now a dedicated staff of 2. I finally have a full-time local helper, Daniela Vargas, who's amazing. But of course, we have access to the staff and resources in the organization, and I'm constantly picking people's brain and asking for help, and it's a team effort. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Cole. So fascinating to hear how each program is specifically designed based on that interdisciplinary need, and that sort of actually brings me. There's a host of questions that are coming in, and thank you to everybody that's attending. This is really what this presentation is about, is giving you some information about some of the different types of models that exist, and then subsequently getting to the heart of what's really floating around in your mind. And we've got some fabulous questions that are coming in. I wanted to pick up, Cole, on what you were saying there about the sort of your discipline, right? Because a lot of the work that I'm hearing that's happening at Kristina's organization, Kyra and Cole's, is that interdisciplinary work, right? So bringing experts from a variety of different disciplines and expertise, and seeing how we can all work together to look at a human and their animal as a family unit and a complete family unit. And so, one of the questions that actually came in is very much related to that. And I will just read the question here. I just lost it, but I'm gonna pull it right back here. And the question is, how can I approach cross-sector collaboration as a staff member of a large organization with a bureaucratic structure? So I'm not sure who wants to take the first kick at the can for that question.
I can kick us off. So
Thanks, Kyra.
I assume by bureaucratic structure, that means some sort of like municipal status or something like that. And we are a municipal shelter. And so I can speak to this one a little bit. The way that we have navigated just like collaboration within the community is really just finding ways to partner with them that still supports our mission as a shelter. So finding missions for kind of human-facing agencies that bridge the gap without kind of stepping outside of like our direct mission of keeping pets and people together. And really the best thing for us has been a combination of reaching out to organizations that we are like seeing working already with our patrons. I feel like animal welfare and human welfare has a lot of overlap with our clients, but we don't really talk to one another. And so we've had many patrons that have come in and saying like, oh, can you please call this person at this housing organization? That's my like emergency contact. And so I've now called this organization and talked to like the same 5 staff members multiple times for these same patrons. And I was like, hey, can we sit down and have a conversation? Because we're working with a lot of the same people here, and I think we can really help each other. And so I think just finding ways that are already existing in your community, as well as, just sending an email and saying, hey, I do this and I'm interested in chatting. And the worst they'll say is no, and you're no worse off than you are now. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I guess I would just add to that, if the silos that we've created are really artificial. If you go into any group of people, I don't care who they are, and you ask people to raise their hand if they have pets, and then you ask people to raise their hand if they consider their pets part of the family, virtually everybody is going to raise their hand. It's visceral, it's instinctive. Of course, I love my pet, I live with my pet, I care for my pet, that's family. So, but we've built these systems where we are trained to, in the animal sheltering world, by and large, still, the person walks in the door with their pet and we just laser focus on the pet. And forget the person, and vice versa. A lot of human service fields, homeless service world for sure, is really trained to think, oh, we can help you, but your pet, sorry, no. But I think, we have to recognize that as fake and not as authentic to how we live our lives. And all of our work gets better if we collaborate. We are all working with the same communities. We all are generally working towards the same goals, helping people thrive and be healthy and safe and happy. So I think that, putting aside those artificial, well, I work for a shelter, an animal shelter, so I can't call the food stamp office, I can't call the housing social worker. No, actually, we can do better. We can keep animals out of the shelter. We can help people thrive and be happy and safe. If we are willing to step a little bit outside of our comfort zone and say, okay, let me take 5 minutes or half an hour and reach out to this person in the other field and put our heads together and see how we can collaborate.
And I'll just, yes, piggyback onto those. I think with our organization, because, we're small, I'm a co-founder, executive director, we honestly can just sort of move forward with anything we want to do, right? We have a board and we have those things, but we don't have like the same bureaucratic things, constraints that a lot of organizations do. However, we're dealing with a lot of organizations that have those constraints. And so one of my favorite things that I love to do is collaboration with other organizations. We are fortunate in Utah, unlike Georgia, that many of our homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters are pet friendly and pet inclusive. I will tell you that when we started, we thought we were going to be very small, and then we've expanded to largest pet pantry in the state and mobile clinics and all of those kinds of things too. But the shelters, the homeless shelters allowed animals, but there was a lot of conflict between animal control and between the shelters, and they would call them for policy violations, right? Somebody left their cat when they went to work. That's not the role of animal control. And so once we were able to kind of come in, we did a lot of training and collaboration on both ends. And we had to talk about trauma-informed language for animal services, working with people experiencing homelessness and crisis. But we also still have to have those language with the human service providers as well. Don't call it the pound, things like that. Your pet's not going to be euthanized if they go to the hospital, some things like that. And so honestly, it just takes a lot of determination and again, sending emails and saying, hey, we just want to come in and help you guys to better respond to the animals that are coming in, because that is in your contract to allow animals. A lot of them are requiring ESA letters. They don't do that anymore after lots of training, lots of barriers that they had, because, again, like these are just unnecessary barriers. And so now we meet really regularly with a lot of our providers. So it's just, you just got to keep going.
I love that. Just keep going. Just keep swimming. Just keep going, right? And the proof is in the pudding here, right? You all sort of started, you saw the need, and I'm certain that you had to do some pitching and some advocacy work, and then connect with those partners that could either see or were willing to see that they sort of had a bit of a problem before them, and then how could we all come together in the best interest of that person and that animal, right? And sort of trying to have our different lens, but finding the unity and the alignment in that. There's a question that came in because much of the undercurrent of what you all sort of alluded to was the importance of transparency and trust. And so one of the questions that came up is how is trust established when crisis boarding typically requires pet guardians to sign transfer of ownership documents to get help during a crisis? And so I just wanted to put that to you all and see if that's something that you've navigated before.
I'll start. Maybe we can go back the other way. Yeah, for sure. They don't know who we are. They don't know we're not animal services that's going to adopt their pets out. They perhaps have had some pretty negative experiences with, animal services, and for whatever reason. So I think a lot of it just goes, again, at this point, I think we're well known in the community because we go out into the community. We participate in a lot of resource fairs. We go out directly to encampments. We are present. And so, I always say all the time that we can help people access services that they wouldn't engage with otherwise because of their animals. So I just shared this at a city council meeting, but 78% of the families that apply for sheltering services are not engaged with any other social services organization. We are their first point of contact into the continuum of care. And then Shelby, our community care manager, does a great job. We have a lot of resources we've really developed where we can share that with. But having that lived experience, our board member, we have had her reach out to some of these families that are really nervous and say, my pets were there. I can tell you that's not their, the program. We don't even have an adoption program attached to Rough Haven. And so we tell them, like, that's not even part of our program. And I know that sometimes can be a little bit concerning if you're part of an animal shelter, right? And whatnot. So a lot of it is really just taking that time to meet with them and really go over the contract that we have in place and be transparent fully about what the process looks like. We also require weekly check-ins. That is what keeps their spot in the program. So we need to hear from them every single week. We send pictures, videos, we allow visits and things like that as well. So those are the things that help us build trust.
I know.
Thanks, Kristina. Yeah, cool. Please.
I'll just jump in. So we don't actually require transfer of ownership. We don't ask for that. The ownership remains with the owner, the pet owner. We call it permanent guardian. But what they're transferring is physical custody of the pet. So, we do reiterate that, like Kristina and I'm sure Kyra, we provide photos, updates, videos, on how their pet is doing. So they do hear from us regularly, and we stay in close contact with the pet families throughout the foster period. But, we reiterate to them all the time, this is your pet. You can reunite at any time. We're just taking care of the pet temporarily.
Yeah, for our organization, I think it's just ever so slightly different than Cole's and Kristina's. So we do have to take the animal in technically as a surrender in our system. However, we have a status that's just called protective custody that indicates that no, this animal is not owned by the shelter. It has an owner already. And then something else that we really strive to do is keep that animal out of a publicly accessible area. So we try and keep those animals kind of in our back of house, so it's just volunteers and staff interacting with them as best we can. And whenever they're doing that intake, they're not actually seeing the contract that says you're surrendering your animal. We created a totally separate contract to go through that just walks through the details of the program, what we're asking of them, what we'll be providing to their pet. And then another kind of different piece too is that our program is a really short-term option. We will actually only hold pets on site for about 10 days. And the reason for that is many of the organizations in our area have a different model where they can house animals for 30, 60, 90 days in a foster. But that can create wait lists just because the animals are moving less frequently. And so we kind of fill that gap by allowing immediate access to safekeeping for their pets. And then we will work with them in combination to help with applications to those longer term organizations. And so I think just that like collaboration of goal building can really help to build trust with the community. And for us too, animal control is one of the largest ways that animals arrive to our facility for this organization, because anytime there's an emergency in the community and there's a pet there, animal control is called on scene and they bring them to us. And so there are many times where they're actually not even signing any documentation with us. We're getting them through animal control, just bringing them on site. And so then what we do is we reach out to the owners and we call, and we have to notify them that like, hi, I'm calling with Foothills Animal Shelter and your animal is here at our facility. And I would say earlier on when we first started this program, that call was met with a lot more panic. of, oh my gosh, why is my animal at the animal shelter? Please don't place my animal for adoption. Please don't euthanize them, all of those things. And now that we're 4 years in, our community has kind of shifted that lens, and now they view us as a community resource. And so 9 times out of 10, when I'm making those calls, it's met with like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're calling me. Thank you so much for caring for my pet. And they have already heard of us as this resource. And so I think those are a couple of the things that we kind of intentionally do with our community is just give them a documentation that has not scary language on it. Immediately upon calling, we're being super, super transparent about all of our policies and outlining the clear ways in which we can partner together.
Thank you all so much for the detail that you provided in those answers, because I think that it does create, it illuminates the differences in the communities. Kyra, you were talking about having actually sort of a breadth of alternative longer term foster programs, right? And so, that's fabulous for your community that you have that. I'm curious if you all very quickly could actually give us a little bit of those stats. I know I have some of them for some of you all, but there are some questions that are coming in, about placing the animals in our facility versus foster and how we navigate that. And so I'm just wondering if everybody would be comfortable to be able to provide how many animals do you bring in every year, the average length of stay, and then if you have animals in foster, in building, or in both.
Sure, I guess we can just keep going back and forth. So in 2025, at Foothills Animal Shelter, we saw just over 1,000 animals on site, utilizing protective custody. We were able to reunite over 700 of those. So our reunification rate kind of fluctuates between like 75 to 80%, and also varies kind of by circumstance. Since we do allow pets whose owners are deceased, that statistic tends to be a little bit lower with reunification than the others, just because it's a little bit of a different circumstance, like their owner is physically not able to reclaim them. And so it's a little bit of a different statistic than the others. All of the animals in our program are on site in our building. We do have some capacity to send them to a foster, but it wouldn't lengthen their stay with us. It's still that same 10-day period. It would just kind of be a less stressful environment for that animal to be in. So yes, all over 1,000 of them were on site at our facility. And what was the other statistic that you had asked for? Or did I hit
Sorry,
that?
I couldn't find my mute button. Yeah, I was curious on the number of animals, length of stay, and where they were
Yes, length of
placed.
stay. Yes.
Yeah.
So length of stay, while we offer 10 days, our length of stay is actually 7. So a lot of folks are able to find arrangements for themselves and for their pets much quicker than 10 days. And of course, there are outliers that we might extend for a couple of days while they're, waiting until they can get their keys to their new place or get acceptance into another organization. But our average stay is 7 days. Um, and I think that shorter term time, and because the animals are so frequently on site at our facility, we're actually able to offer visitation, and they can come in anytime during our open hours to come and visit with their animals, which really works to maintain that human animal relationship.
That's a really unique feature for sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Kristina or Cole?
You want to go, Christina? I'll go. All right. I unmuted already. All right. So let's see. Average length of stay. So we offer a maximum of 90 days of fostering. The average length of stay is about 65 days. With, obviously some people need the full 90 or even a short extension, and some people only need a few days or weeks, but that's the average. So we don't have, even though I'm sitting in this beautiful Atlanta Humane Society building, there is actually no dedicated space in this building for pets in the Pets in Crisis program. So we are almost entirely foster based. We do have a smaller location in the North Metro area where I have 4 dog kennels available to me, and a few cat spaces. So really single digits that stay in an Atlanta Humane Society facility is almost entirely foster based. So we do have a waiting list, unfortunately, but that's the reality. And then numbers, I should have come with those. I would say in an average, let's say the last 12 months, I think we've placed probably about 150 pets into foster homes. We currently, at this moment, have about 70 pets in foster homes. So those are the kind of numbers that we've got. We get 30 to 40 applications for help a week, and unfortunately, have to decline quite a few of those. But we do the best we can with the resources we have.
Thanks, Cole. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually just sent out our 2025 impact report today. So I've got that pulled up so I can give you some full statistics. Again, we're about 60 to 90 days. Sometimes that's longer. It really just depends on the situation and the client and, their family and what's kind of going on in their life. But our average length of stay is about 54 days as well. So it looks like, we received 930 crisis sheltering applications last year. So we talk a lot about nights of safety. That's a great tip if you're looking for funding. Talk about nights of safety for like human services providers and funding. So we provided 18,400 nights of safety for pets and their families. It looks like we sheltered 317 last year, and about 89% were directly reunified with their family. I think we've talked a lot about this internally with these programs, that there is really no standardization for data collection with crisis sheltering. There's kind of a lot in traditional sheltering of length of stay, live release rate, things like that. There is nothing like that. And so we've all kind of created our own and hoping to create our own best practices of what that ends up looking like. For our organization, we consider a successful outcome anything where the pet owner is involved in the decision making. So we have the return to owner rate, but we also consider private rehoming, if that's the direction that they figured out they need to go, as a successful outcome in our reporting numbers that we share. And we have only probably about 4 or 5% of families that we just don't hear from again. And that's a pretty low number. And we just have no idea what's going on in their life. I think that sometimes when they've said goodbye to their pets, to try to come back and go through that process again is very challenging. And so when we have that, you rely on our Humane Society of Utah and some of our rescue partners that will go ahead and take them in for us to do the adoption part. That's their expertise. We focus really heavily on what our expertise is, and that is the reunification of animals with their families.
Thanks, Kristina. That's something we talk about in our program too, is sort of like, what is the spirit of the program? And I love that reframe, right, around success being that the person has a moment to breathe, to be able to participate when they're not in the throes of crisis, to be able to sort of figure out what the next best step is for all members of their family, which might be reunification and may be another outcome, that is that they had the moment to be able to participate in that. And there is a related question. What happens perhaps for, Kristina, you kind of mentioned this, I'm wondering, Cole and Kyra, what happens if people are unable to be reunited?
Yeah, for our program, they would default over to the shelter, and we would move that animal forward as we would any other animal at the shelter. So for our organization, we never euthanize for time or space. The only reasons we would ever have to move forward with euthanasia would be a behavioral or medical circumstance that creates some sort of safety concern or quality of life concern. And so our behavior team and our medical team would then work with that animal, determine if they would be a candidate for our adoption program. And then if so, we would move forward for adoption. If not, we do have a reclaim option where we can notify the owner that, hey, so sorry, like we're not going to be able to rehome in our adoption program. Would you like to come in and pick up to try and rehome elsewhere or with a friend or a family member, or do you want to come in and say goodbye before we handle euthanasia? So we still do try and give them the option to remain connected with their animal even after that decision is made. And then, of course, we always tell owners as well that while they might be defaulting right now, if down the line their animal is still with us and their circumstance changes and they're able to pick up at a later time, to just let us know, and we'll always return that animal as if they're at the shelter still.
Before I answer, let me just give a shout out. If you have like logistical questions like this, there is a informal group of us. We have a Google group listserv. and monthly Zoom calls. Kristina and I, mainly Kristina, runs with help from guy named Gabe, who runs Poster Nashville. Please join us. Just message, any one of us, me or Kristina, can add you to that list serve. And the calls are a great chance to ask questions, troubleshoot, commiserate, brainstorm. And we have a drive that you can access our contracts, forms, training materials. So super helpful stuff in there that we all share really, really freely. So just a pitch for that. But we do have a contract that we have the pets families sign at the outset that says if you are unable to reunite with your pet at the end of the foster period and any agreed upon extension, the pet is deemed surrendered to the Atlanta Humane Society. So again, that happens about 14% of the time is our current surrender rate. I will tell you that a good number of those times the fosters end up adopting the pets. They've fallen in love and it's a good fit. But when that is not possible, then the pet does become publicly available for adoption.
Thank you. There's a question about extension. Actually, there's a couple of questions about whether or not there's flexibility at the end of that time frame. So I invite you to comment on that if you would like to. But the other question is there any recommendations on how to achieve reunification? And the second part of that question is more quickly. Are there any strategies that you all have found over your years of operating these programs that have resulted in an increase either in reunification and or reduced length of stay?
Yeah, these are the things that we talk about all the time in that group, in the group about, I think we all have kind of our processes and our structures and our SOPs, and then they always are moving those time frames and the situations. So we try to staff all of our cases together once a week. I would say the biggest thing that we see is communication with the family. I highly encourage the weekly communication with them. I will tell you that when we started Lost Our Home in Tempe, Arizona, was doing this, and Jody had been doing this a long time. She is who I connected with. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. She shared all of her documents with me, and then we've just kind of moved forward over the years. We have like a little check-in template that we text them. We send them reminder texts every week. Like we give them as many opportunities to check in and give us updates as possible. Coming from the criminal justice system, sometimes I'd be like, oh, well, it's their pets. They need to reach out to us. And then I remembered all of the clients and probation that I had that, would lose their jobs, their kids, everything, and they could not remember to drug test every day because that's just how we operate as people. So we want to really provide as many opportunities for them. And then also, if you do not have like social work experience on your team or you're not sure where to start with this, a great thing is referral based from other social service organizations. We do require for all of our clients to have a touch point with like a housing coordinator, which is very accessible here in Salt Lake. That may not be as accessible in your area and rural areas as well. But in a big city, we have many housing navigators that are just walking at the library kind of stuff. But for 60 days, if they're not employed and they're not working with anyone for housing, I mean, the likelihood of reunification is almost zero. So we just ask a lot of questions and say, here's some resources and, let's move from there. And I think those things have really been successful for us.
For us, it's kind of getting creative. So because we're in that 10-day, like much shorter time window, we actually will reach out every 2 or 3 days for check-in, just to kind of say like, hey, here's an update on your animal. Where are you at in your process with applying for housing or applying for additional placement for your pet? Or is there anything you need our help with? Like, do you need vaccination records so you can show your new housing, things like that. And so we're kind of always checking in with them. But of course, leaving it up to them to dictate the response level. And the other thing we do as well is coming up with creative solutions. A lot of our clients are they are housed somewhere, but maybe that place doesn't allow them to have their pet because while they're staying on their mom's couch right now, she already has a dog and that dog doesn't get along with their cat or whatever. And so we'll come up with a lot of creative solutions, such as if we send you with a really large crate where the animal still has room to kind of move around and all of the animal care supplies that you need, like, will your mom allow you to have your dog in there if there is that barrier, that separation, to keep the pets safe in the home? Or, we've done the same thing for folks that, could have the cats in the garage. And so we gave a really large crate so that they could keep their cats in the garage and still have them safe. Um, for folks that are maybe living in their car during cold weather, we get them stocked with a lot of blankets, as well as any like plug-in heated bedding. Like we kind of get creative to make things work, even if they're still in their circumstance and haven't really come quite to a resolution yet. So that's something that has worked for us, as well as with our referrals too. There are some organizations that will pay for boarding at an organization. There is uh, I believe it's nationwide. They're called PACT, PACT, and they'll actually just pay for the cost of boarding. So if they can't continue staying at our organization and maybe they aren't behaviorally a candidate for another organization, like reaching out to a boarding facility, seeing if that's something you can coordinate. Um, or reaching out to, traditional methods like rover.com and seeing if they can find somebody on there who's willing to kind of work with them on their situation and lower their costs, things like that.
Just real quickly, yeah, we ask questions at every touch point, really, about other resources that the family might need and not know how to access or not be able to access that would help them to stabilize as quickly as possible. I mean, Atlanta's social safety net, such as it is incredibly fragmented and very confusing. There is no centralized access point. I mean, we have a continuum of care, but it's hard to get a foothold. So we ask in the application for help, we ask in the consent to care contract they sign, and then we check in every 15 days in the 90-day foster period and say, what do you need that you don't have? What would be helpful to you as you're navigating what you're navigating? And then we do our best to do warm handoffs with organizations that can provide that support.
What I'm really hearing throughout is this love, right? The intention behind these programs is your all recognition that there is this gap in service and really seeing that the animal wants and needs to be with its person long term and vice versa. And so you've all come up with these incredibly thoughtful and intentional programs based on your community and based on the networking that you've done. And I also hear learning from your clients as well, or your participants and your family. And I just really want to honor that space that we can, harness our ability to be allies and then be able to sort of make sure that we're shifting and changing and growing and shifting as we need to based on sort of what our clients are telling us works for them and what doesn't work for them. And so as we sort of close out, there's a number of questions about fostering and how to get fosters and how to keep fosters. And I think, Cole, your suggestion and your offer of inviting people to join the Google group is a great one. So what we will do is we weren't able to get to all of the questions, so we will do our level best to answer those after the fact. I think we're going to be able to share contact information, but before we closed out, we did want to share some direct feedback from a participant from Kyra's program, because I think it really does illuminate the importance and the essence of why these programs exist and the importance of doing so. May I invite you, Kyra, to share? I'm going to share the photo of your
Absolutely.
family
Yep. So one of our patrons gave permission for me to share a photo of her cats as well as her name. And so I'm going to be sharing just a direct testimonial from our patron, Amy. And I think that nothing I say can kind of encapsulate the work that we do better than her. Like the way that she said it was just so beautiful. So on the screen here are Gizmo and Nairobi. They were two cats that stayed with us last year in our Better Together program. And Amy said, I cannot say enough about Foothills Animal Shelter and their incredible Better Together program. Without this program, I would not still have my two cats, Gizmo and Nairobi, who I've had for 8 and 5 years. They truly saved my family. After going through a very bad and traumatic breakup involving domestic violence, I suddenly had nowhere I could take my cats. All I needed was 1 week anywhere, or I was prepared to move into my truck just to avoid losing them. I was desperate, terrified, and heartbroken. Then I found the Better Together program. Not only did this program save my sanity, it made it possible for me to keep my baby safe during one of the worst moments of my life. Foothills cared for Gizmo and Nairobi with compassion and love when they were scared and confused. Every single person I encountered there was kind, patient, and genuinely compassionate. Leaving my cats was heartbreaking. They were terrified, but knowing they were being cared for by people who truly love animals made all the difference. Because of Foothills, I didn't have to choose between homelessness and giving up the animals who are my family. Domestic violence is hard enough. No one should have to lose their pets on top of it. Programs like Better Together make it possible for people to escape impossible situations without surrendering the animals they love like children. They gave me the hope when I had none. Today, my life looks completely different. I found the love of my life, and we just bought a home. Gizmo and Nairobi are settled, safe, and happy, along with their new siblings, Mia the French Bulldog and Thrash the Pit Bull. This happy ending exists because of Foothills Animal Shelter and programs like Better Together.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I found myself getting a little emotional hearing it because I think we can all sort of imagine what that might be like if we haven't been through it ourselves. And so thank you for the work that you do, Kristina, the work that you do, Cole, and the work that you do, Kyra. And thank you to our attendees for participating today, the work that you're already doing and the wheels that are turning in new and different ways that we can provide support to families. We will share the Google group because there is lots of interest in that. And we do look forward to seeing you all perhaps at that next Google group. Thank you all so much.
Chasing the night away.